Welcome to another UFC Fight Night prediction with myself, Don Rifle. We got Mir versus Bigfoot Saturday night, Porto Alegre, Brazil. And we got a couple other good fights on the card. It's pretty decent. The undercard's not the most exciting I've ever seen, the early prelims, but I'm not going to bother predicting those because it's too difficult. Going to predict what I know. And I'm going to start off with Rustam Gabilov from Mother Russia, Dagestan. This guy is good. He is fighting Adriano Martins, who was also a pretty good fighter. But looking at Gabilov, so when he came into the UFC, this guy's just a grappler. Specializes in suplex, knocking guys out from suplexes. And he won a couple of fights. He won his first 3 fights. One of those was against Jorge Masvidal, who we know is a damn good fighter and a very well-rounded fighter. But he did lose to Benson Henderson by choke. But people underrate Benson Henderson, as we saw last week, with all those fools betting on Brandon Thatch with no experience to beat a world champion like Benson Henderson. Was never going to happen. Anyway, Gabilov in his last fight, he fought Benson Henderson. He got done by rear naked choke. And he just didn't have all the tools to beat a guy like Henderson. Not many people do, only the elite do. Like the Cowboy. But one thing I'm pretty sure about is Adriano Martins doesn't have the skills to beat Rustam Gabilov. And what Gabilov has added to his game is combinations on the feet. Before, he would just go in 1-2, takedown, suplex, armbar. That was his thing, basically. But now he's added high kicks, which he caught Masvidal with a beautiful high kick, and he's added a lot of combinations. The thing is, the guy like Gabilov, if you know he's coming for you to take you down, you're not always expecting these crazy combinations on his feet. Now, I think this is going to be pretty easy for Gabilov. Martins, I mean, he's a good fighter. He's got some experience. He won his last fight in the UFC. Got knocked out by a head kick by the Cowboy. But he beat the likes of Darren Cruikshank by straight armbar. Now, Cruikshank is kind of susceptible to those things. But Martins, I just don't see. Maybe Gabilov isn't going to be able to finish him, because Martins is a good jiu-jitsu guy. But I feel like Martins is going to be tentative. Gabilov's going to rock him on the feet. He's going to take him down. And he's going to probably win a decision. If you want a nice method victory and a little bit of a gamble, go for sub. Gabilov likes a sub. He loves going for the armbar for top position if the guy makes a mistake. But I think Adriano Martins is going to make that kind of mistake. He's probably going to take a bit of a beating, but I think he's going to last the 3 rounds. And I'm going for a decision for Rustam Gabilov. Okay, the women are fighting. Jessica Andrade is fighting Marianne Renaud from France. Well, she's from America, but I think she's French. She's from French heritage or something. But Renaud is the bruiser, they call her. She's 37 years old. And, I mean, she's only been fighting professionally since 2010, but she's good. She's solid, and she has some skills. And she's fighting Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade is Brazilian, and she's only 23. And she has some good wins. She's beaten, she's 3 in a row in the UFC. Rosie Sexton, Raquel Pennington, Larissa Pacheco. Her only loss in the UFC was to Liz Carmouche. She's beaten the likes of Dujeva, who we've seen in the UFC. So, Andrade versus Renaud. I am going for Renaud, who is the underdog. I saw her in her last fight, which is quite recent. She is sharp. She's been training hard, and I think she's going to be a little bit too wily for Jessica Andrade, who's going to go in there and is going to try and go a bit nuts. And it's going to be all hyped up with her home crowd. And she's probably going to go in there and try and throw some bombs. And Renaud's just going to dance and it's going to counter her. I think Renaud's going to win this by decision. I don't see her finishing Andrade unless Andrade goes berserk and blows herself out in the first round or two. But I think Marion Renault for a decision finish in this fight. And she is the underdog, so you'll get some decent odds on that, I can tell you. Cody Gibson is back. Cody Gibson, now this guy has got skills. He has got serious skills. He was knocking lumps out of Manny Gambier in his last fight, and then Manny Gambier caught him in an easy submission. It was almost like one of those New Year's Eve anticlimaxes, and Cody Gibson went out with a whimper. But Douglas Andrade is 22-1. This guy's a bit of a killer. If you look down through his record, it's a ridiculous amount of KOs, head kick, punches, head kick, KO, loads of KOs in the first round. And he lost his first fight in the UFC against another Ruski, Tukagov. He lost a decision. And Cody Gibson versus Andrade is quite interesting because Gibson is a big favorite for this fight, but he's shown himself to be kind of naive and a bit overconfident. And I don't know if anyone saw, but there was a video going around of Gibson last year where he's in a bar and some guy he starts talking shit to some guy, and the guy stands up to him, and Cody Gibson says something like, "I'm a fucking UFC fighter, man. Do you not know who I am?" The guy proceeds to kick the shit out of Cody Gibson for a few minutes. Or at least he knocked him around the room with a couple of punches. Gibson didn't look too good there either. And with Andrade being at home in Brazil and being a big underdog and having a 22-1 record with loads of knockouts, this guy has obviously got game. Now Gibson's got game too. He's a good fighter. He's great stand-up, but he's going down to Brazil, and I don't like betting on Cody after losing to a guy like Gamburian, who, let's face it, is a journeyman. And he got caught way too easy in that fight. I'm going to bet against Andrade for this fight. I'm going to think Cody Gibson, he's going to look good for about a minute, and then he's going to get caught, and then he's going to get beaten. And then I'm going to profit, because I'm going to have a bet on Andrade. And the odds are very nice. Lock that in, people. Lock it in. I'm going to take a look now at Edson Barbosa. He's fighting Michael Johnson. Excuse me. So Barbosa, we know, struggles to get people to spar with him because of his brutal leg kicking. Possibly the most brutal. And only Cowboy really rivals him in the division. But Cowboy sunk in a choke on Barbosa. Barbosa didn't like that, wanted a rematch. Afraid not, Edson. He bottled it in that fight. But since then, Barbosa beat Bobby Green. And Bobby Green just didn't really come out for that fight. Maybe that's because once you take a kick off by Barbosa, you don't want to take another one. He beat Edmund Dunham as well in the fight before that. He's got some pretty good wins. Edson Barbosa. He's fighting Michael Johnson, who I think has been out for a while. His last fight was last March. We beat Melvin in a unanimous decision. Before that, he knocked out Gleison Tebow and a unanimous decision Joe Lawazon. And I can tell you this, Michael Johnson has looked real good in his last 3 fights. Real good. And I reckon that he's going to surprise a lot of people here. Barbosa, he's from Brazil. He's fighting at home, relatively. But I think Johnson is going to have a way to avoid the leg kicks. So I think Johnson is going to win this by decision, and Barbosa is going to be frustrated. And people are going to believe Michael Johnson is going to storm up the division, and he will. I believe in Michael Johnson. I saw such great improvements in his last few fights, and he's at a year off. He's going to have been training a lot and probably be even better this time. Barbosa, although he has probably the best kicks in the division, the hardest, most destructive kicks, he's a little bit limited. And I just think Michael Johnson's going to do a bit of a TJ Dillashaw versus Barao on Edson Barbosa. And he's going to and Barbosa just going to not know what's going on, and he's going to lose by decision. And he's going to be pissed off, and Michael Johnson's going to be very happy, and he's going to go out like John Jones, do some coke in Brazil to celebrate, most likely. All right, the main event of the evening, Bigfoot versus Mir. Now, the irony of this fight is that the UFC is just doing a press conference on steroids yesterday, and Bigfoot, before the Mark Hunt fight, apparently before he went out to the ring, they shot him up with a big injection of roids, some sort of like bull testosterone or something, and that's why when he went in there and took those rocks to the head from Mark Hunt, he still stood up. And I was just watching that fight thinking, this guy can't be taking this unless he's on something. And he was. And Frank Mir, as we know, liked his TRT. But Frank Mir, he had an exemption for that. There's no point saying the guy was on roids. But anyway, Frank Mir was always one of my favorite fighters. He was the most destructive submission guy, possibly in the history of the organization, just because once he gets hold of you, it's over. I don't think I've ever seen Frank Mir get hold of a submission and not finish it. Because once he does, it's just like the limb is leaving with him. Problem is with Frank is he's just got slow. Well, he was never really fast. And he never really had good head movement. He tends to get caught. And most of these amazing submissions he pulled off is after he's been caught already. But there was one fight where Frank Mir demonstrated he did have some stand-up skills. And that was against Big Nog, where he outboxed him. Big Nog said he had staff, but Mir still did outbox him, and he knocked him down a number of times. And I think he's going to do the same to Antonio Silva tonight, because Silva looked old and grey without his injections in his last fight. And I mean, he's certainly not faster than Mir. And Mir ain't too fast, but he ain't slower than Antonio Silva. So Mir's going to stand this up. He's going to knock down Bigfoot a couple of times. He's going to wait for him to get back up. Bigfoot's going to get back up. He's going to knock him down again. And then he's going to sink in a submission at some point. This is 5 rounds. Neither of these guys is going 5 rounds. Someone's getting rocked. I just hope to God Mir decides to move his head a little bit and doesn't stand in front of these giant canned hams that Antonio Silva is going to throw at him. But I think both of these fighters, they should be done after this. Both of them have taken some serious beatings. Both of them are good fighters, don't get me wrong. Almost legendary, the legendary Silva for knocking out Fedor. The first big loss I can remember Fedor having. And Frank Mir, that armbar against Tim Sylvia, ripping Big Nog's arm apart, Frank Mir is a legend, former 2-time UFC champion. But I think this should be his last fight. And I hope he gets a decent payday for this. I think it's the last fight in Mir's contract too. But anyway, lock in a Mir for submission. He's going to go out in style. If he loses to Bigfoot, I'll just be very sad. Bigfoot is slow and plodding. And Mir, you can win this fight. One of my favorite fighters of all time. I'm locking him in by sub. Maybe I got my rose-tinted glasses on, but surely to God, Frank Mir can beat Bigfoot Silva. The odds, if we want to have a look at Frank Mir, he's quite the underdog. Silva's 2-5 on the side I'm looking at the moment, and that's the reason I'm going to make some money this weekend, because Frank Mir is going to beat Silva, and he's probably going to sub him. The odds for the sub aren't up yet. They probably won't be too long, but I'm going to lock it in. I'm going to win some cash money. Then I'm going to go and celebrate. And you are all going to be celebrating too on Sunday, because you're going to bet on this, and you're going to pick my picks, and you're going to make cash money. Good luck, everybody. I'll be back next week for Ronda and Zingano, and you know which way I'm calling that. Adios, amigos.